Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm very glad to be with you, and I'm very honored to moderate this third and last panel we have with us tonight. I know you are all tired a little bit, and we are also tired, but I think this will be an interesting discussion, so keep with us. We have with us Gregory Valianatos, Barbara Cole, then Dan Mitchell and Krasis Dancer. So they'll speak in this order. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, so
join us. There is. We get one chair.
Now we have a fifth one.
Yes.
I don't have it in my list. It's a mistake. Okay, Mr. Giorgieri from Georgia. And good. Georgia, European. So our subject here is extremism versus rationality. We all lived in Greece, extremist political system in the last 3 years. The crisis made the system a little bit to collapse, and we saw some parties that came from far Marxist roots or even Nazist background to gain power in the political system, and we think this is a huge problem in the process of stabilizing the country and going back to progress. This is the subject that our basic key speaker is Gregory Valianatos, and you listen to everyone and we'll discuss after. So.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you once more on behalf of the Liberty Forum Greece, chairing it at the moment. And this is the second year that I'm grateful, Barbara. I think that the free market is definitely the main subject of this roadshow, but I would be delighted to raise 12 little issues that normally don't come in the agenda of liberal fora. Extremism versus rationality, progress versus stagnation. What direction will European states take regarding immigration? Are demagogues and agitators going to win? Is political extremism in a rise? Is multiculturalism dead? Can Europe return to its roots without xenophobia? Interesting issues. That normally we go and spend time talking about finance. So let's go into deep waters. No regulations. What does it mean, no regulations to migration? I don't think that we every day think of precisely defining what we'd like to do with migration. What does it mean we're liberals and can go everywhere and work everywhere and we have rights because we are in the European Union? We see people who migrate now going to countries, most of them are liberal, more or less. But we can travel to these countries, other people don't. I take this roadshow being international, being global. I understand it starts from Europe, but we are liberals and liberalism should be around the world known and dealing with issues. Are the plans that we should import 25 million people from the rest of the world into Europe so that we can keep on working with the same prices that we were talking about some years ago? No. We are a country, the entry to Europe, to the European Union for people coming from Africa or Asia, And we are lost in dealing with our liberalism and laws and regulations of the European Union, pretending they regulate the issue. Are we prepared in a free way, with no regulations, to let everyone in? I think we're not. How are we going to deal with it? Are we letting extremists decide? I was discussing publicly with a politician from Golden Dawn. This is the Nazi version of nationalism in Greece. And he was offering us his solutions on immigration, saying that he would provide immigrants with papers and send them to Europe. And I was trying to explain that Schengen would shake and it would create problems to all Greeks and Greece itself. So he should go back to his Auschwitz and Mauthausen approach and be clear so that people get afraid and not vote for him. Do we understand the refugee problem? Accepting these, we make the distinction. Are they going to be like Indians in plantations in the United States? Are we dealing with them? Are we listening to the High Commissioner? Do we realise this is a nation shared in all European countries? There is a problem of people who are fuging from countries that are just France falling apart, trying to export them to it. Do we understand what a major plan means? Deal with drugs? Bangladesh, the size of France. That there is somebody else what people would do. Do we believe that free and someone will take drugs with no regulations? There is harm reduction ways of dealing with it. How are we dealing with religious fundamentalism? Or are we just prohibiting everything? Let other people deal with it. Are we listening? Are we the ones who have feelings of trust? No, listening to young people. Are we listening to we discuss with these surveys about the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, new ways of getting out of that? And all those values. Do we see check the public, for instance, who has legalized quantity of drugs? Socialists. What are the results? Can we still measure Amsterdam? How do we deal with Roma? Are we dealing with these issues, or will let other people do it? How are we dealing with sex population of people who come to India 100 years ago and still violent, think they are refugees and migrants? Who has to regulate that part of the world? Why is it beyond any other profession? What is the difference between assimilation and why are we so much stuck? Are they going to be like Indians in gender plantations in the United States? Are lesbians, gay, bi, trans, equal people who have opportunities? Do we need special rights for them? No. Can we see people beyond these things? Us, liberals. What is terrorism for us? It's something we shouldn't deal with. Where is the violence there? Where is the ideology? Are they political prisoners? Are they prisoners of consciousness? Can we speak with these people, or those who regulate that? What is the right of someone to speak one's own language? Had Albanians or Greeks of southern Albania decide to unite with Greece or Cyprus, how would we laugh in the way we do with Ukraine now? Is it so far away from us? No, it isn't. Do we deal with it? No. Should we? Yes. What is nationalism in our hearts, in our thoughts, in our liberal agenda? Borders. Is it something that we can cross easily? Can we trust people who decide to move to another country, join another country? Issues that should be combined with our fiscal agenda. And discussions we should open with other Europeans, because we shouldn't let them design next Europe that we love. I am a mayoral candidate for the city of Athens. I'm optimistic. We have a great program. We have a very liberal program. We have the best liberal program ever pronounced in this part of the world. And we will win. Thank you.
The topic is extremism versus rationality, but it also has a subtitle which is progress versus stagnation. And if we look at the numbers and figures and the facts that we face and what we see, then I'd rather go for progress versus stagnation. If we look at, on the one hand, we have those Eurosceptic parties, and on the other hand, we have parties that want to have big Brussels, big Europe by all means, without making a difference what we really, as European citizens, need and want, whether it's this big Europe or whether it is a modern Europe, whether we probably would have to go one step back again and think of what the founding fathers of Europe had in mind, namely a Europe that creates peace and that creates economic growth and something that brings prosperity to everybody, and not create a class of bureaucrats and also politicians in Brussels who serve their own interests. And I will simply go through some slides, and if it works. Yeah, no? Well, just keep it there. We all know the facts and figures. We know the economic miracle after World War II. We know the rise of the welfare state, which is actually the worst thing ever, and which is actually a threat to the next generation, especially to you, because you will have to pay the price for that. The rise of the EU goes hand in hand, and by saying the rise of the EU, I mean the rise of the bureaucrats and of red tape in Brussels. It goes hand in hand with this welfare state. And we have seen the failed policies and what has happened when countries were bailed out and when rules that were imposed on ourselves were broken by sheer political greed to be re-elected. And of course, I would like to simply bring us back to the real world, and we can keep all the side stages, the agreements and placebos by side, because this would take too long. I'll simply go for 2 more slides here. This we can keep, and this we can also keep. And then let's go to the next one. This is one example of regulations, so-called directives and memoranda that only came out in February out of Brussels. And all of these include exactly the 92 billion euros per year that are spent on, or that we have to pay for regulation, that reduce the competitiveness of enterprises, that reduce the ability to create jobs by businesses, and that also reduce the ability to compete also within the European states. So I know that Greek regulation is even worse in many places, but I mean, you could do with Greek regulation, but you have European regulation on top of that. So this is something that needs to be eliminated. One more slide, please, if we can get it. So those neglected threats, the pension bomb, the greying societies which will not help us solve the problem of the welfare state. Migration, labor markets, we have already discussed this in the last panel. Education, youth unemployment as well in the first panel. But what is threatening the most is the lack of competition and productivity. It's also how do we create innovation, and where do we put the right incentives? Can we finally have all the leap zones here, or each island a leap zone? I think this would be optimal for Greece. But I would like to ask 2 more questions, or actually discuss 2 more questions with you. When we look at the facts and figures of waste in Brussels, I'm just talking about 18 million euros per year just on the parliament. 190 million per year just for the traveling circus for the 2 cities between Brussels and Strasbourg. The red tape, the 93 billion euros per year on EU regulation I already mentioned. So these are pure facts and figures that we have to keep in mind. So I would argue that there is an option for an accountable and cost-effective parliament in Brussels that we could go after. Dr. Stein has already mentioned a couple of initiatives, one by Cameron, the other one by Bolkestein, and a couple of Dutch European MEPs, but also politicians. And all these changes would be possible without changing the Lisbon Treaty and without touching the contracts. This would be an option, but again, we need brave politicians to do so. So, for example, the European Parliament should publish all MEPs' salaries, expenses and entitlements and the voting records. There is no transparency so far. We should ask for that. It's easy to provide this, at least in times of IT, if it works. The European Parliament should also have a single seat. We should have a smaller commission. We should finally give up the intention that each country should have a commissioner. We could run this European Union, which actually is not a country, but the EU is sheerly a tool. It's something that helps us run something. It's a tool, nothing else. It's not a nation, it's not a country. Europe is a continent, but the European Union is something different. It's a tool, it's a means. And we must not fall into the trap of Merkel, and this is my last sentence, when she, as a political move, very wisely tied the future, the fate of Europe with the European Union and the Euro. And she tied it together. But we don't need these ties. These are two separate things. And if you look at the facts and the figures and the economy, you fully understand that. But obviously some politicians don't want to see that. And it's our task to make them think and act. And by the way, you really should go and vote, because after all, we are in the new Lisbon process and your vote matters. So please do that. Thank you.
I want to get across simply one point in my 6 minutes. And the one point is why growth matters. Why growth matters is because if you have a fixed pie, if your economy is not growing, that is the kind of environment where you don't get rationality. That's the kind of environment where people get very negative and hostile. You sort of sow the seeds of extremism in an economy where people think they have no hope, where they think they have no hope. They want to blame somebody. And unfortunately, they usually don't, well, a lot of times they blame the politicians, but they don't blame the politicians as much as they should. Let me give you a couple of simple mathematical identities. If your economy grows 1% a year, it's a mathematical certainty that it will take you 70 years to double your GDP. If your economy grows 4, 5, 6, 7% a year, as some economies have done, and some economies are still doing around the world, you double your GDP in less than 20 years. That's the difference between, say, Italy and Hong Kong. It's the difference between capitalism and statism. When you have an economy that grows very rapidly, in other words, when your pie is growing, everyone can get a bigger slice. But if your economy is fixed in size, if the pie doesn't grow at all, then what happens when people in your economy see, well, there's a rich person. That rich person has a bigger slice of the pie, so by definition, I must have a smaller slice of the pie. That is a common failing, even in countries that enjoy some growth. We're not having great growth under Obamanomics, but at least we're growing 2% a year. But a lot of people on the left in the United States think if someone becomes rich, it must come out of their pocket. And that's wrong. People become rich, at least in an honest system. Obviously, there's people who get rich through cronyism, and that's a completely different story. But if you become rich because you're providing a valuable good or service to the economy, you're only getting rich because other people are voluntarily giving you money in exchange for whatever it is that you're providing to the marketplace. You are increasing net wealth in your economy. But in a mindset where people think the economy doesn't grow, where they think it's the fixed pie, where you're having that 1% growth over 70 years, which is imperceptible to most people, that's the kind of environment where you get extremist political movements coming up. One other point that I would add to this, if you look at some of the academic research on things about homogeneous societies versus heterogeneous societies and things like welfare spending, it's actually sort of like all the questions you raised in your opening comments. Very difficult things to answer. Well, one of the difficult things to answer is that heterogeneous societies apparently have less welfare spending because people are suspicious of each other. Oh, well, if we have welfare spending, it's not just going to go to another Swede, it's going to go to someone who maybe has a different skin color or a different religion. And so, in some bizarre way, we want to try to control the welfare state, and we want to get people to be less supportive of redistribution and big government, but we don't want them to do it simply because they have hostility toward other people in their society. So how exactly we can change the political culture of various countries so that people understand that you're much better off with a Hong Kong-style approach of limited government and free markets, and not the statist approach that gives you the stagnation that breeds the extremism. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I will start with answering Mark's question whether what we describe about the European Union is a hijacking or a feature. And my answer, and I will try to prove it, my answer is there is a regional design which allows for populist hijacking. And I will try to explain why. So, but first I will start with the perspective of the so-called new member states. So, the European Union actually had a positive impact on all these new 10 countries, including Cyprus and Malta, by the way, because the process started somewhere at the beginning of the 90s, in '93, with the free trade agreement. That free trade agreement was denied, for the eastern neighbors, and now they're suffering. So, since the time of formal accession, most of the new member states have been growing fast, at least 6, some countries 7%, but on average it's about 5.5, 6% per year. Bulgaria, and this is the case for other countries as well, enjoyed in this period the longest period of economic growth ever since independence. And this was for other countries as well, including in comparison to communist years, because now we know, after reading already the statistics backwards, so now we know that there was no period of more than, in any country, no period of more than 3 years of growth during communism. Then there were failures. Bulgaria is probably the richest country in terms of experience in failures. Bulgaria actually, under the communism, collapsed, defaulted 3 times. And then as a result of that, again, in '97. But since '97 till present day, Bulgaria actually not only doubled, the GDP growth was and is 232% since '98. So the Union gave this country several things. The most important one was symbolism. If people go on the streets now in Kiev, or a month ago, they go now even in Belarus, in Minsk. I don't know whether you follow the news, but they're on the streets in Belarus. They go for symbolism. They don't go for cash. So there was a very important cash component. The cash component was thanks to the free trade and the single market. Everybody, all of these countries benefited a lot. But this was not a result of the formal membership. It happened before the membership. What we have with the formal membership, and here I come to the design issue. So, very often we speak about the Union as an international entity which is extracting cash. This is not the case. The Union is in fact very cheap. The Union, costs every member nation like 1% of GDP per year. And it's basically peanuts compared to the average size of government of our countries. The average for the European Union is about 47–50%. So we are speaking of the cost of the Union, which is 1/50th of what is being redistributed on national level. The problem is that having this problem on national level, we cannot deal with this because the European Union is not taking cash, it is taking opportunities. And these opportunities are being taken by regulations. If you look at the Greek or any other country burden, regulatory burden, 80% of the regulations or laws adopted by the national governments is originated by Brussels. And the cost of it is not 92 billion as they calculated. 92 billion per annum is the administrative cost, the reporting cost. The actual costs were calculated for the last time in 2001, and they were 535 billion euros in 2001. And then the European Union, the Commission, changed the methodology of calculation. If we apply the same methodology, which was used in 2001, by friends of mine, by the way, today the cost of regulation will be between 750 billion and 800 billion per year, which is a lot. But it is a lot because it takes opportunity. It creates illusions, which is, these illusions are very important for the political parties. So, in fact, the problem of the union is that it creates a rhetoric. It creates a rhetoric of being important, while on national level parties stop being important, and they simply forgot the issues which were raised by our keynote speaker. They forgot it all, and this vacuum is being filled everywhere. In all the new member states, is being filled by populists, and it's very dangerous.
30 seconds.
Yes. So in this situation, it's very difficult to see what can be done. And I think there is only one option for the European Union. It won't happen now. It will happen probably, in 7-8 years from now. The Union can do what it can have been doing well for many years, and this is to convert itself into a free trading zone. Thank you.
Now, I wanted to take your attention to one very important thing, that many people are believing that the libertarians are just idealist people, and you see, I slightly changed my name of my presentation to this direction. The idealism or rationality. I think that libertarianism is rational also. It's not the ideal, but it's rational. So I will jump over the many slides. Now you can see some red sentences. There's, in Soviet Union, Georgians believed that as the laziest and corrupted and illegally organized economy. So it was believed in Soviet Union that it was the worst republic in Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was much more centralized than European Union. It was much more bureaucratized than European Union. And Georgia in Soviet Union was the most corrupted nation, as I said, and everybody was stealing everything from the public property. And after Soviet Union, Georgia's GDP dropped like this. You see the graph. From 10,000 per capita GDP, it went down to 1,500, and then all the improvement started only after the free market reforms were made in Georgia. Now what we are always proud is to say that we deregulated our economy, liberalized, and etc., but I want to give you two examples of why free market reforms work, and even in such a drastic situation we had in post-Soviet Union, Georgia. So we made a tax reform, decreased all the tax rates, and from 22 tax varieties, we remained only with 6 kinds of taxes. So now you'll see the result. This is a result. Every government would be very happy to see this kind of result when the tax revenues are rising. I'm not very happy with that, but you see that they are talking about rising taxes always when they are talking about how to get more money. And instead, you see how it worked. Now I want to go quicker to this. This is how the GDP was growing after the reforms. But my presentation is, so you see the salary was improving also. And now, what was the most important thing? That Georgia, after Soviet Union, became a darkness. There was no electricity for years. And then only free market reforms, deregulation of the energy sector helped us. And now we are selling more electricity. We are exporting more, twice as much as we are importing. You understand? We need some. These are the figures. During last 7 years, you see, during last 7 years or 6 years, sorry, we exported 5 billion kilowatts and imported only 2.6. So this is the reality. The free market works. And I was joking yesterday, and I want to continue this joking, that free market works in a country like wine-making country, because I believe that there are certain differences between wine-making and beer-making countries. But
don't tell me.
Yeah, sorry. And even works in an Orthodox nation. This is another joke. Many people believe that Orthodox nations are all the lazy or somehow crazy, but it worked. This is our experience of Georgia. Then you can see the other results also, that we are one of the best in economic freedoms. We are one of the best in dealing with corruption. From 132nd place, we went to 51st place during a very short period. 8 years. During 8 years, we were 132nd, and we are 51. So you understand? We don't believe anymore in Georgia that we are a corrupted nation. We were always told that we are a corrupted nation, we are a lazy nation. Nobody believes in this, because the last survey shows that only 1% of Georgians remembers when they heard, not the bribing, but when they heard the last time about bribing. Only 1% of the population remembers this. And there are no cars stolen, there are no more policemen robbing people in the streets. This is our experience. So I would encourage Greeks to follow, because we Georgians call Greece Saberzneti, which means in Georgian the land of wise people.